Most recent studies show that young people are becoming less happy. In May this year, The Guardian wrote a piece about this. In June, Harvard Public Health released a study on why young people in the US are so unhappy. Then according to USA Today, article published in March says the young are now most unhappy people in the United States. Anywhere you look, this is becoming a serious issue. So what is causing this? According to the World Economic Forum, economic challenges, social media, uncertainty, political polarization, and social isolation are the main reasons for why we are facing this challenge today. But it's not like prior generations didn't have their own struggles and challenges. They certainly did. And I would argue that in many ways, life today is not as tough as it used to be. So why then are we less happy even though we have more? One of the best explanations I've heard so far was from Dr. Daniel Binus, whom I recently had on my podcast. And here is what he said.
It's a great question. And I think we need to look at history. If we start looking shortly after World War II, which is where we really saw that decline in mental health problems, well, what happened after that? Well, there were several factors that came into play. And of course, in recent years, we've seen the acceleration of some of those factors. But some of the main factors, I believe, were between 1947 and 1950, you saw a huge amount of televisions being sold. Very interesting. And it just blew up. And so essentially, of course, before then we had radio, et cetera, but we had a new member of the family enter the home.
The new nanny.
Yeah, the new nanny, exactly. The television had a tremendous influence. This is the first time that we really had mass media in a way. And what then happened is that the mentality of Americans started to actually change. And we started to enter into what some historians call consumerism. So essentially, people started to have this mentality that, you know what, unless I have the latest and greatest, I can't really be happy. Because of that, there was a trend in society to start buying more and more. And the historical data actually showed there was a huge uptick in purchasing all sorts of things. But what happened along with that, because people were buying so much and they were also needed 2 cars and all these things that they felt they needed, the amount of money people were spending rose dramatically. As a result of the amount of money that they were needing for their new lifestyle, indebtedness went up. So how did they keep up with that? Well, in a lot of homes, this is where mothers then went to work. Now, I'm not against, don't get me wrong to our listeners, don't come and try to find me and crucify me. I'm not against women working, but the point being, the traditional family structure started to break down. And so you had less interaction in the family units. You had less of that connection that we talked about earlier, how important that is. And you might have spent a good amount of time with your family, but a lot of it ended up even being in front of the TV at that point. And so I think the breakdown of the traditional American family structure and the shift in values started to take place around that time. And it's very interesting because some studies have shown, how previous to World War II, you had more of what we call intrinsic value system. So what does that mean? Well, that means you have more concern about the importance of your values as far as like how you can do for the greater good, the community, what's going to really be for the benefit of other people and for my relationships, right? And the shift went more to extrinsic values, where what are the things that are going to make me happy, and maybe even the degrees and all of these things that are more from the outside and not as much the internal, deep, meaningful. Back in 2011 to 2012 is when over 50% of Americans started owning a smartphone. And this was precisely the same time where there was a huge spike in depression, especially in girls. And so again, we see a lot of this that's just one example, a lot of this correlative data that helps us understand some of the reasons behind this.
If you like this video, here's another one for you to watch. And if you don't want to miss the next video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button.